Okay, so welcome to today's session on Scan to Plan with BricsCAD for Surveyors. My name is Sean Twomey. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and I've got over 25 years of experience in the CAD survey BIM world. I've worked with all kinds of design and survey software and survey instruments over these years, and this process of doing Scan to Plan is one of the more interesting ones I've seen in that time. So, we will leave some time at the end for questions, but please type in any queries you have during the session and we'll make a chance to go through them at the end. If by chance we don't get to them at the end of the session, we'll definitely get in touch with you afterwards to discuss, because we're very keen for all feedback on this process. So without any further ado, let's bring up the software and look at this. So what we have here is a finished product where we've taken a point cloud, produced the plan view with some dimensions. You can see we've also labeled these spaces. So we've got bedrooms, halls, etc. And we've got various schedules displayed. In this case, we can actually look at this viewport and change it from, let's go to area function. And now when I go and refresh, it will color code these areas by the function of the actual room. So we'll see the bedrooms are colored in yellow, halls in green, etc. That's one of the more elaborate outputs. We can also just do a basic version where we show if I click on external walls in red, I've made that one just to show literally that we can display different wall types in different colors and just do the standard view type. This comes from the scanned image here, the scanned point cloud. This is the plan view of it. If we look at this in 3D, we can see that we've extracted walls, internal and external, and placed various windows and doors to finish this off. So let me close these and we will do this from scratch. Before we start doing the scanning, let me quickly just remind us about the objects in BricsCAD for doing BIM dimensions. So I'm in my BIM workspace here. If I go to my modeling tab, what I'll do is just use the quick draw command just to show a very simple set of walls. As I draw from the inside out, this will trim the walls at the boundary of each external wall. If I hover inside and just touch one of these walls, when I move to the outside, then you can see how it cuts that wall. I can do the opposite, where I hover on the outside and move inside, where I will create a new shape like this. So even though it's a very simple command, you can do quite a lot with it. Now, until recently, if you wanted to do a wall by itself, what you could do is hover in an area like this and carefully move the mouse, so just one wall by itself. We've got a new improvement here, which is a very important part of what we'll do today, a tool called Quick Wall. So when you press this, you can draw a wall just by itself. So on all these, we have a bunch of options on the right-hand side, which we'll go through in a second. And that's where we will set up the internal walls for our system. So I got a file saved here called point cloud import. If I go to my point cloud and reference, I can bring in the file I need, which is this one here, and that's going to insert into 0,0. If I go to my overall plan view, I can see my point cloud here. Now when I do this process, I tend to use the quad quite a lot, because all the commands are here when I hover over the point cloud. You can of course go to the ribbon tab as well and see the point cloud color map and align commands up here as well, which are the two that I'm going to use. So I'll click on the color map. Because this point cloud has got no colors, I'll just set it to work in intensities, just so it's easier to see. And the next thing I want to do is line this up so it's orthogonal on my screen. So I click on the point cloud align command. You draw a rectangle somewhere where you got plenty of walls for the software to analyze. You do have the option to move the UCS and not rotate the object, which would be very good if we had a more complex point cloud with different alignments. In this case, the walls are all consistently pointing in the north, south, and east, west direction, so we can just work with this. What I will do is rotate this a further 90 degrees, just so it goes across my sheet nicely. Okay, Now what we could do here is move to a front view and carefully check the height of the windows and the various floors. What I'm going to do, since I'm mainly going for a plan view, is use the automatic point cloud detect floors command. So when I click this, I will say I want to work on the full point cloud, and I get an option to create spatial elements. I will click on yes, and you can see now that we have got floor 2 and floor 1 created. So if I click on my building tab here, I can see that these are the elevations that have been assigned. So floor 2 is at 72.08 and floor 1 is at 69.72, which I could go and edit here if I wanted to change any of these. So now if I click on floor 2, I jump to an orthogonal view, and if I actually spin this view around, you can see that what it's done is it's cut the point cloud in those spaces. So I can use my story tab here to drag this to the right height so I can see my windows in enough detail. And if I go back to my plan view, I can start working on this. So one thing to point out before we start on this, it's a very well-known situation for anybody in the survey industry. I'll first of all just point out that we've got our point cloud nearest snap turned on. So if I go and start drawing polylines here and snap to my point cloud, I don't need to worry about the different Z values. So in this view, if I type in polyline, I'm going to snap to some point clouds here. And if I do the same thing on the wall, so I'm snapping to a higher area, because I'm in this floor view where the elevation is set to 72.08, these two polylines have got the same elevation. So we're snapping to the XY component of the point cloud, but the Z value according to our floor level. So even if you wanted to manually just snap and draw these walls in 2D, you could just go and do that from here, and it will be a lot easier. What we'll do instead is something a lot more interesting, where we'll go back to our modeling tab and click on that quick wall command. So I've got some default heights turned on here, which I'm happy to work with. And the most important thing is I've turned on the auto detect wall thickness command. So what that's going to do is work out the thickness of the walls based on the point cloud. Now this is obviously currently in beta, so there's various improvements to get made. It's quite new. But even on this beta version, if I zoom in here and start drawing these, you will see that when I hover the mouse in here, it picks up the thickness of that wall and it draws a segment of the wall for us. So if I press the control key, I'll switch to a north-south orientation, and I can just continue working along here. Sorry, I missed that one. Just sometimes if you zoom in, it is quicker to actually find the points. So let's move into here. So I won't do all of these today. I'll just do a few to give us a quick taste of the process. So we've got enough of these walls, I think, to get us going. I might just do one or two more very quickly. The length of the segment that I'm currently doing is set to 1.5 meters. So what I can do is make that 1 meter if I want. Again, if this is a personal preference where you pick the representative sample of the wall you're going to draw. So that will give us enough to get this started. We can do some more afterwards if we need. Actually, I will do one more. I'll just do a little bit of this one here. Okay. Now, we could draw the external walls in different ways. In our case, we don't have the full point cloud scan of the external areas, but we do know the thickness. So I can go to my quick draw command, and again, I would pay more attention to my various widths and thicknesses here, but I'll accept what I've typed in previously. I'll snap to the point cloud here, and down at the bottom as well. So that gives me the external boundaries, and what I can now do is the same command I showed you earlier, where we can snap. Initially, we can refer to one of the internal walls, and then use the point cloud snaps to set that wall in. So we'll do it here as well, and you can see how it's It's finding the internal wall as my first reference, which is what I want to do, and then I can bring this across to here. There's many different approaches to how you do this. You could, we'll do a few more of them in a while, but you could just draw the quick wall command around the side here, or use the BIM wall command, which we'll use in a second. But at this stage, we've done the basics of what we need. So let's go and turn a few elements off. So let's hide the slab so we can see what we're doing here easy. And let's talk a little bit about how we join these up. So previously what we would do here is go to a 3D view and click on the area of interest, and you could either use the push-pull command, or you could use the connect with nearest wall command on the face. That works quite well, but everybody wants to work in plan views these days. So the way we have fixed this on the V23.2 is we've got new commands called BIM trim, BIM extend, and BIM slice, and these do exactly what you'd expect. So you can go to BIM extend, hit that wall, and extend it to meet the external wall. I'll actually turn the point cloud off for a while to make this really clear. So in this case, hover over this wall, BIM extend. You can press enter to repeat the command as you would normally do, and just work through these. So you can very quickly build this up. You can obviously also use the other commands, such as the L-connect command. So we'll connect this wall to this wall here, pick the version we need for the actual corner piece by pressing Control, press enter to finish that command. You can go for BIM extend here, etc. So I'm not too worried about making this accurate at this stage. I'll just show you what the various commands do. So I'll extend this out here again. You can see how quickly you would work through this. Now, as you're doing this, you're creating wall elements. So these aren't just 3D solids. If I grab one of these, it has all the IFC properties of a wall. So we're doing this as quickly as we would do some 2D drafting to produce the general shape. So the next thing we would do here is, if necessary, we would go and cater for some of the non-orthogonal walls. So in this case we don't have them, but if we were to pretend that this area here where the mouse is a wall that's not going straight north-south or east-west, we can use the BIM wall command. So in here, if I snap to my point cloud, it will draw a wall of the thickness I specified. So I can, depending on which way it's orientated, I can press the Control key to cycle through those and draw these non-orthogonal walls. Let me do a few more versions of this. So actually, sorry, let me do it again. I'll put a curve at the end of it. So I'll run BIM wall. Also, I will, so I'll run this command here, BIM wall, run it from here. I'll click on draw arcs. So you could actually add a curve in here as well. So depending on what you're trying to capture, you run that, and the exact same command works for BIM extend to have these meet. Some of the other versions of what you can do here are run the BIM trim command. So if I go and let's change this to a version like where we got these wall button like this, let's extend this along here. And now what we want to do is trim this wall where these two meet. So you hover over it, and instead of using BIM extend, use BIM trim, and that will cut these two walls here for us. You can see how quickly you can run through these. There's also a BIM slice command. So you would go here, click on BIM slice. It's going to cut that wall. You can snap to the point cloud for the exact location and literally slice the wall into two in that space. So doing the walls, super easy. What we'll now do is put in some of the doors and windows to add more detail. So at this stage we can't see the point cloud very clearly because the walls are blocking. So if we select all the walls here, we can go to our properties and change the transparency to 90. Now if we zoom in, we'll be able to see the areas where the doors are between them. So let's go to our library, and I'll go to doors first of all, and I will select on single swing door. So I could place this in and change the values afterwards, or I could press the control key and change the width to 1.15, which I think is the correct value, and place that door here. So you would then go and select this door, hover over it, and use the quad to reorientate as necessary, so depending on what exactly you need to get done. And all you would do in this case is, if it's a situation where there's multiple versions of the exact same door in the building, you will get one done correctly, hover over that, and use the BIM insert command to effectively copy that, and then just move around and place that in all the relevant locations around that building. So again, I'm not too concerned about getting it accurate at this stage. I want to just show the concept. So we just place a few of these in here. I'll just do one more up here, for example. Okay, and if we go to our 3D view, we can see we're actually drawing the IFC model still here, but we're fundamentally doing all this in the 2D view. So that takes care of the door situation. You'd obviously do a lot more of these and do it in a lot more detail. The next thing that we would do is go and put some windows in. So for the windows, same process. We will go and click on the window option here, pick the window type, and it asks us for a sill height. Now, you would have measured this quite carefully for a serious job. I'm going to give it 0.75 for my height here. So let me just 0.75 meters. And now, when I move into here, I can place a window. Again, I could use the control key and change the value of this here, but I'll do it differently this time. I'll select the window afterwards, go to the properties, and change the width to 1.4. And again, once you got it correct once, you will go and copy that, assuming you have multiple iterations of the same window type in your drawing. So we'll put a bunch of them on this northern face of the building, just so that when we do our dimensions in a while, we will have a few windows to document. So I'll put some over on this area as well. Okay, so this is a whole bunch of windows put in here. At this stage, we don't have automatic tools for columns, but if we did have some of those, you could easily use the box command just to draw one of these and give it a height here. So what we now get, if I exit this view, and I will again turn off my point cloud so I can see what I'm doing easy. We've got this set up here. So I will show this. I will turn my point cloud off. What I will do as well is remove the transparency on these walls. So I'll go back to my properties and set this to by layer, and I'll turn my slab back on. Okay, so now what we've got here is our very quickly sketched up model. What I will do is, I should have drawn this box more carefully. So let's just grab that face and use the push-pull command and snap to this wall here. Okay, so that's just a random column that we put in the middle of nowhere. So we can see that we've got our basic setup here with our doors and windows for our initial stab at this drawing. So what we'll now do is create some section views, some elevation views. We'll define some spaces, and we'll also convert all things into BIM objects. Now, because we use the BIM wall command and the quick wall command, the walls are automatically classified as BIM objects. But this column, for example, is just a solid object. So if I run the BIMify command, so I'll type in BIMify, and I get a bunch of options here on the right hand side. So I definitely want to create spaces, I definitely want to create section views, and I also want to auto detect and classify objects. So when I press apply, it will go and run through the drawing, so you can see how it's defined all these spaces. So I could easily go and click any of these. I can even click a few of them together and change this from space to, let's say, bedroom. I could also go, let's just check what's happened here. This has become a BIM column, which is perfect. I can also go and just verify that I've got my elevation views created here. I've got my section view here, and you can see the section view is the right height to show these windows. If it wasn't, I could select this with a long click and use the manipulator to move that up and down as needed. But the view I have here is quite good. So let's go back to the plan view and think about how we're going to process this into a sheet. So I've got a few options. I could just go and extract a block from that view and place it in model space in this drawing. What I prefer to do is to create a new drawing completely. So if I go File, Save As here, you can see I'm in a folder called Webinar, and at the moment it's just this drawing. So what I'll do now is create a project, which will go and create a new subfolder in there and put all the sheets in there for me. So I click on Create Project. What I can do here is give this a name. So we call it Webinar Building. I won't go through all of these. I'll just put a few in so you can see the title block being populated. Project number, I'll put in the architect name as Sean. So you will go through these obviously and spend some time and save them. In here we've got a few options. One is we can go and create sheets manually and start from scratch and drag various views in. A quicker way of doing this is to go to our sections here, select the floor plan, right click and click on Create Sheets. So this will go, and we've picked on an A1 sheet size, and we select the view scale we're after, and it will show us exactly what size that will look on our sheet for us. So I could add multiples in here, but for the simplicity's sake, let's just work with one of them. I'll press Create, and if I now go and look at my sheets, that's been created for me. So I can double click that drawing, it opens up, and if I then right click and update, you will see that this has now been generated as a plan view. So we've been presenting this quite frequently over the last few months, and a lot of people ask exactly how this works. So what we've got here on model space is a very clever block. So this block is effectively a reference back to my original drawing, which you will see in operation here when I go, let's go back to this view here. Let me go back in here. Let's just quickly turn back on the point cloud. Let's go back into this view here. I put a few more walls in. So let's go and select Quick Wall and put this wall in here. And again, I'll use my extend command. So we've got BIM extend and BIM extend. So now on this sheet here, if I hover over the viewport, I'll see an option saying update BIM section. So when I run that, that new wall now appears. I could also access that command from the project view just by selecting here and right clicking and update. So you can see that this is a live link back to the original drawing. Just to show exactly where it is, it's under a folder called Sheets, which is under that same folder I showed you a while ago. So it's a very tidy interface, and the details have been populated as per what I've typed in for the various names. So what we'll now do is look at how we can dimension this. So we can go and look at the annotation tab and click on, we got standard dimensions, we've also got BIM dimensions. So on the BIM dimension tab, you could get quite clever and use the filter options and select all the walls through the properties, but often it's quicker just to go and click these things manually. So I click on these walls here, I will press enter, and I'll put these dimensions off the sheet to make them very clear. If I press Control once, it will do the wall spans. Press Control twice, it will show all the individual dimensions going through the various windows. So we can very quickly run through the drawing and populate those. What we can also do is tag the spaces that we've defined. So if I click on tag here, I think we call these 2 bedrooms. This one's just a space still, but again, we can do the same thing we did a while ago where we go in here. Let's just quickly turn the point cloud off. We'll grab this space here, go to the properties, and we will call this one a storage. And this one here, we will call, actually that's enough for the time being. So in here, we can go and refresh that viewport, and that's called storage. So you'll see here that the dimensions are in paper space. So we're accessing everything from the paper space viewport here. And this gives us the effective scan to plan that we're after. People have asked, could you go and explode this and work with your own symbols? So of course you could. What I'll do here is go back to model space, pick this view, I'll just copy it so I don't damage my original. And then here, if I was to go and explode this, so these are now just hatch patterns and lines. So you can then go and use all your standard CAD commands to do whatever you need. The other thing to point out is that in here, if you go to your layers, you will see there's a process of placing all of these on specific layers. So I'm currently on layer 0, so I got boundary 0, and I got fill 0 for these two areas. So if I change my fill 0 to a different color, let's make that say dark red, that will control that hatch pattern for us. So once you set those up once, obviously you go and use them over and over again. I'll make that a less red color and make that a dark gray just so it doesn't look so intense. So that is the basis of getting the basic plan view produced. What we can now do is continue on and produce some more documentation. So back in the project view, if we go to the right-hand tab here, we got a plus button at the bottom where we can go and add a whole bunch of new things. So you'll see bills of materials, schedules, and type plans. So let's quickly go through those. Now you've got options for new schedule, also import schedule. So some of these ship with the software. So if I click on import schedule, I can go from my Windows schedule here, open that. Now in my case, I've only got one window type, so this won't be very exciting. But that Windows schedule now shows up here. I can drag that onto my sheet and produce that documentation for myself. The way in which this is defined, I can double click it and edit as well. So it's effectively just a little spreadsheet. So I could take any of these and delete that column and add a new one from the overall BIM properties. So we ship with a few of them to get you started. They're quite easy to modify and change. There's some more comprehensive versions too. So instead of adding a window schedule, let's go and go for the full Windows BIM version. This will have a lot more detail, so let's just move it across to here so we've got enough space. So, okay, actually we've only got one window type, so there isn't that much to show. We can do the same with the doors and the walls and everything else. So on the first version that we showed you that was complete, we had done all those. And the last thing we look at here is the typed plan. So again, we will click on the import button. So in this case, import a typed plan. So I've got a few customizations here done myself, but let's look at area colored plan first of all. We'll import that one. So this now shows up here. And if I was to go to my properties, click on this viewport and change the type plan from currently nothing to area colored plan, I can now refresh that and it will color code the areas. And the way in which it does this, you can again double click this and look at the logic. So you can see that we've got a series of queries. So BIM type is a space, floor area is a certain size, then make the color red. And you basically just do as many of these as you need and work through them that way. The variation on this, which I've done just by copying that file, is you go to import type plan and click on area function, press import here, and same process, click on the viewport, change it to area function, and now when you refresh it, it will color code these based off the function. So you can see bedrooms are yellow and storage is grey. So if I was to go back into my original drawing, let's just, again, let's turn the slab off so this is easier to see. Let's click on this one here, and let's make this one a storage as well. And let's make this one a bedroom. So again, we go back into our final production sheet, hover over the viewport and refresh, and see that those have now updated for us. So that gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of producing interactive plan views. We can also add the elevation views here. I just, for the sake of simplicity, just clicked on the plan view. If I was to go for, say, the back elevation, create that sheet, same process. I'll give it the same scale so we can drag it across to the same sheet if we want. Click on create, and we've got this view here. Again, we can just hover over here and refresh it, and we can now see that we've produced the elevation view. So we would then go through the same process to label this. We can show the various patterns for the walls and everything else. We can do more on those in a separate session. The main focus on today's session was to produce the scan to plan views. So the important things to emphasize are that it's as quick as doing a 2D version in terms of doing the line work, and you're not restricted just to perfectly orthogonal walls. You can do the BIM wall command for these areas. The other thing to mention is that this version I'm using here, the point cloud is quite well defined. So if I was to say show this again, you can see how it's very clear, and when you run the command, it's got very clearly defined walls to work from. If that wasn't the case, let's say it wasn't as crisp and clear a point cloud, it could still work, but if not, just run the BIM wall command and click on the area you want, and in this case it's oriented correctly. If it wasn't, you press the control command and move to the other side and just type in the width once. So that width isn't totally correct, so let's run the command again, press W for width and snap across to here, and now when you draw it, it is the correct size. So you can easily work through the areas of a point cloud where the points aren't as well defined using that. So with those, we're quite confident that we can produce very comprehensive plan views. Let's not forget that we also have the IFC options to export this. So again, I will turn my my slab back on. So we also have a proper 3D model of all this. So if I undo my section here, okay, here we go. We've got a full IFC model as well. So we can go to File, Export IFC, and put that into whichever BIM system we need. So that's, in some ways, people consider this to be a bonus because the main thing they're after is the plan views. But as you've got it, you could do the IFC version, or also just include a 3D view as a bonus. It's a nice way to illustrate the overall extent of the survey very well. So with that, thank you for your attention. We are very happy to discuss this in more detail. Everyone we've shown it to has been very excited and very interested in it. So what we'll do is run through some of the questions now. And if you think of a question afterwards, please leave us know. Or if you wish us to do a one-on-one presentation with you, let us know. We're happy to do a web session like this and go through it.